Okay, so what we would like to do with this particular session is, as you know, we had the 3 breakouts, and everybody covered the 3 content areas of what are our opportunities, what are the threats, barriers, and then what are the solutions. That's the one thing that we want to walk away today, tomorrow with, are actual solutions. We want to be able to get some things done, right? And so we want you to walk away and feel like you got something very solid from this. So, which group wants to start? Okay. Where are my posters? They're missing. Tracy May, come on up here and help me. I'm tired of talking. And I'm breaking the microphones. Okay, so our breakout session was on grassroots advocacy. And so we started just by covering some of the things that Tracy May has been involved in, some of the things that Misericordia has been involved in. But we, first of all, identified some of the opportunities. And what we talked about is our families are a great opportunity. So Misericordia has been really instrumental in creating a family organization. One of the things that came out of that is people said, well, how do you do that? And we said, well, we have Sister Rosemary. That's how we did it. So, you know, that may be a solution down the road, that we offer some sort of a workshop on how to create an organized family solution. Sorry, family organization. I'm getting tired. Okay, another opportunity. Our individuals, the stories that they can share, we need to use them, right? We need to make sure that when we are using them, that they're clear and that everybody understands really what the issue is. And so that's another opportunity. We also talked about the opportunity of Together for Choice. This is an opportunity. Look at all these amazing people in this room. It's so exciting to see everybody here. Can I just ask real quick, how many of you were here 3 years ago? Oh my gosh. All right, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we have some new friends too, so that's great.
Now we've doubled.
Yeah, awesome. So looking at maybe creating a very formal movement, which Together for Choice has started.
Under an umbrella, that was a really it was a great example of what came out of our session, in that Together for Choice has the opportunity to create this overarching organization that can pull together individualized messaging from lots of other organizations, both large and small, so that we have a unified message as we move forward.
Another opportunity is that what we've found is that we can be the legislative advisors, right? We need to educate Congress on what our issue is, and we're the experts, so we can be the legislative advisors. Is that good? Yeah? Somebody say yeah? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so some of the barriers, threats, I mean, there are so many that are obvious, so we didn't spend a lot of time on this because we really wanted to focus on solutions. So first of all, I know that when we started doing this, we were like, what is our ask? Why is that so hard to come up with a very specific ask? We feel like today we have an ask, and we can share that information with you. And you know, we're much more solid when we go to the offices as far as what exactly we're asking for. And what is it that we're asking for? Choice. We're asking for them to consider expanding options rather than reducing them as a result of the rules and regulations. That's pretty clear. It seems like such an easy message, but it's hard sometimes to kind of get that to a very concise point.
Well, you see that right now our messaging is not consistent from one organization to the other. What we all do is very unique, and yet we're all serving this wonderful population. And so that really is a huge barrier for us. The opposition and people who have opposing viewpoints currently have a very succinct message. They are all in alignment, and everyone knows what it is that they're out to do.
So these two kind of go together. First of all, everyone has a message. When our senators and reps get up in the morning, they are swamped with a bunch of issues, right? And so how do we ensure that our message is clear enough and it's important enough that we move it up? So right now, we might be down here, but with Together for Choice, we're going to move it up here, okay? Okay, so this is the best part, solutions. So we said we need to have some social science behind our efforts. So we need research. We need some funding for research.
And data. That's what we need, research and data.
We said another solution is take the time to meet with your congressmen, congresswomen, senators in their district when they are on recess. Know that. Know when they are going to be back in your state and they're going to be in your office, and go and meet with them. And also at that time, ask them to come to your organization for a tour. That is very, very powerful.
Town hall meetings and giving members an opportunity to interact with their constituents, both in their districts and when they're in Washington, D.C., is essential. They need the public relations pieces of it, and it's how we build relationships with members. So this can be a part of the solution. Give them an opportunity to interact with you and be positive about messaging.
So with our messaging, use emotion, but use it in a productive way. I think we can all get pretty hot around the issue, and that is not productive. I said earlier, fly in formation. I learned today there are so many different advocacy groups happening. We all need to get in line and fly in formation and do this together.
So,
What's that?
flying, we're flying in formation. So here's what we need. We need to come up with a unified hashtag so we're all on the same page. Anybody have any ideas? We'd like to hear them before you leave. Unified hashtag.
Okay, we got another page of solutions. Okay, so this was a good point. We need to know what the opposition is saying, and then we need to build relationships with the opposition. So as Doug O'Brien said last night, I think it's really important that you talk with ACL. It is. And in fact, we agree with ACL. The only thing that we don't agree with is their definition of community. So if we can come to an understanding with them that everybody should define their community themselves, I think that we could actually make some progress.
Another recommendation was to develop a toolkit that can be used for all of the members of Together for Choice so that everyone has the information that they need to be well informed when approaching a member, whether it's within your state or in Washington, D.C.
Social media, using photos, using videos. Again, we need to define our hashtags so when everybody leaves this conference, we're all using the same hashtag to post things on social media.
A suggestion that came out of Ohio was that there are sometimes lead members that work on disability-specific issues. So identify who the lead member is in your state and then build a relationship to work specifically with that person.
So the other thought would be carve out IDD. So right now, the issue is that physical disabilities and intellectual and developmental disabilities all fall under the same umbrella, and that's really a concern. Am I clear? Yeah? Okay.
Good. The last one would be to know what the opposition believes so that when we go in to deliver our messaging, we understand what the member is going to hear from the other side, and we're able to talk about both sides of those issues so that we don't just come in and leave them sort of open for the attack without further knowledge.
All right, that's our plan. Okay, if employment could come up next.
Hi, so I'm Michael Diaz, and this is Ann Peltieri. We're both with Misericordia. We had a very lively, spirited group discussing employment and 14C issues, and so we tried to follow the pattern, but we all had a lot to say. Ann's handwriting was better, so she was scribing, so she's going to read some of our notes for us.
All right, so some of our opportunities are education for our providers, education for families, for our self-advocacies, telling them the truth on 14C because it is a complicated issue.
Yeah, there are clearly some very misguided points that have been fostered in across the country by the opposition advocates that miscommunicate 14C and do little things like, it's a law from 1938, and my rebuttal to that always is, well, the Bill of Rights came in the 1700s, so, and it still works out. So we have one of the big things that I would really ask everyone to make a commitment to here is not to use the term sub-minimum wage. That is an advocate push-in. It's not part of the law. The law is specialized wages, but the advocates have succeeded to even indoctrinate that language in DOL guidance. So we need to push back and get that changed.
to piggyback off of that, now is the time to hit hard. It is an exciting time to be alive, even with all of the negative things that we are facing right now. Now is the time to get excited, to utilize some of the companies who are excited to be social advocates for not only our generation or our population, but populations across the board. Get that fire that they already want to engage in, and to kind of work off of that.
Yeah, we're facing a really tough time in history. A lot of social challenge, a lot of emotionally charged things, but what we're feeling kind of in the Illinois area is a business reflex of maybe being a little bit more socially minded, and wanting to maybe do a little bit of good and be more connected with some of the good things. And so we're finding more businesses, more significant employment opportunities seem to be emerging. And we couple that with a growing economy that's regenerating businesses with new income to be able to do things like customized employment. It is an opportune time to take it on.
Yeah, Gina already touched on this, but another opportunity is to separate ourselves from the general disability population. So if you don't disagree a little bit.
We've already heard about the congressional briefing that was interrupted, but the point that wasn't said that we shared in our meeting was that there were about 18 to 20 self-advocates with intellectual disabilities that had prepared and prepped and were present to talk about why employment choice for them is important. And when the ADAPT came in, every category of disability amongst the general disability community was represented in the group from ADAPT except for intellectual disabilities. So what happened was everyone else shouted down the issue of that was really meant to be for intellectual disabilities. We have an opportunity there if we can separate ourselves and create a separation of intellectual disabilities from the rest of the community. It's there. There's a difference. There's a decided difference that separates us from the rest of the community, and we need to make that happen.
And just to touch on that, self-advocacy, one of the things that was amazing about that Washington, D.C. incident is that our self-advocates would be able to tell their story. And that's one of our weapons that we can utilize moving forward.
Yeah, and we've heard that well today, the uses of self-advocates. Any threats?
So some of our barriers, the protesters, again, to just touch on that, especially nowadays when people will protest anything.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive time, right, in protesting. And so it's something that we have to be prepared for. The more we work actively towards new legislation or new rulemaking, we're going to be confronted more and more with this angry strategy. And so we're going to have to be, as I already said earlier today, we're going to have to mix it up a little bit. We're not going to do the misbehavior kind of things, but we have to be righteous about what we believe in and stand up for it.
Another barrier we're facing is the villainization of 14C, and also service providers in many cases, and changing that mentality.
The mischaracterization by the oppositional advocates, we talked about, they had a 30-year head start on us, folks. They were out beating down the doors, and they're funded to do every day, go out and talk to people. Meanwhile, all the rest of us, what were we doing? We were working with people with disabilities and caring for them, sharing life for them. And we were kind of like complacent, okay, we know they're out there, but they're not really doing anything. And now suddenly we have this rush of threats to us over the last 5 years and even more, and it's picking up pace. So again, we have to activate ourselves, we have to get our grassroots out, and we have to catch up.
One of the final barriers is just the funding concerns, not only for our individuals that are working in the different programs, but also that the focus is on 14C when it really should be in other places. So.
In that National Council for Disability report that was mentioned earlier today, Scott Mandel and I, each about 50 pages into the document, both of us caught the most important piece of information in that 50 pages, that in the last 10 years, there's been about a 50% reduction in the use of 14C. At the same time, there's been no change in an increase in competitive employment. So what that says is 14C is not the cause. It's not a diversion from employment, but that what it says is we are not funding supported employment appropriately. We're not funding customized employment appropriately, and we need to have adequate funds to meet some of these lofty goals. Okay.
All right. The advocates against 14C are making it almost impossible for us to utilize 14C at this point. Is there anything that you'd like to add to?
Yeah, you know, we were talking about the cases in Ohio and such, and essentially the strategy is if they can't get the law changed, they're gonna backdoor us. You know, they're gonna make it harder so that we select. And you know, one of the misrepresentations of the statistics of providers that are self-choosing to no longer have 14C is that they've had this like moral awakening, and that's not the case in many of the providers. I would argue even the most, but that providers are fearful of the repercussions of an aggressive anti-14C campaign.
And then Gina touched on many solutions that we had also thought of. Social media, grouping together, making sure that we have a united voice. Supporting companies who utilize 14C, making sure these companies are informed about what 14C is, the benefits and the risks, and aren't put up against any risk for utilizing it. All right. Supporting and this is something that we've talked about throughout the conference, just getting to know your local government, your state government, and national government, and being active in those roles. And also defining the terms of what 14C actually means, making sure everyone's aware of those terms, and continuing to provide great service. That's what's really going to make 14C thrive, is if they see it being used appropriately and seeing the care given to our individuals in all of the different facilities and seeing exceptional care.
Yeah, we should be legislating to best practices and enforcing on the bad actors. We shouldn't let the bad actors dictate our regulatory drafting. Okay?
All right.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we had a great meeting. Scott McAvoy, Marbridge, housing and residential options. And, you know, first of all, there are so many different housing options, program services, serving the full spectrum. And I think that itself is an opportunity with everyone gathered here, going over the models that we serve. But as we went down through the list, existing communities to expand to meet the growing need for those who rely on the waiver. So we've got some programs that are opening up group homes in the community. They're checking the boxes off what the waiver requires without changing what their core mission is, and I think that's an opportunity for a lot of us. Talking about civil rights when it comes to HCBS, you know, the right people to choose where they live, where they work. Public sources of funding for housing developments. There's a couple of folks in here, and the networking time talk about like tax credits in Florida and things like that that have been successfully used to create housing options for many folks who choose to live there. Affordable housing for the developmentally disabled population, you know, using Section 8, HUD housing. There's all kinds of options available too. And a lot of you guys in here have gone down that journey and could learn from one another. Political engagement, you know, I find that not enough of us are doing what Misericordia is doing and bringing in, you know, the people who decide on rules and regulations into the communities that serve them, and some are scared to come in there. So we could do a better job getting the people who are the politicians, both state and on a federal level, to see what we actually do. Yeah, diversity, again, as I began, we got so much diversity in this room, and we need to leverage it. You know, one opportunity is essentially joining Together for Choice, and it's just $100 per organization, and it's no charge for individuals, families, staff members, employees, advocates, so get the word out there. Let's get a lot of people joined up. New developments throughout the country to meet the critical need of housing. There's examples of my possibility is creating a 300 unit housing unit up in near Plano, Texas, and they're going to have 200 dedicated to just market value people from the community, neurotypical, and 100 dedicated to those with disabilities. So it's kind of integrating inside a campus and a mission designed for people with disabilities. That's an opportunity as well. Now, threats. Continuing opposition to congregate care settings. That's an ongoing thing. There's a lot of ignorance out there. Just defining community itself has gone to a whole different level. We have heavy reliance on volunteers. That could be tough, trying to get enough volunteers to offset the cost of providing services. More complex needs require a higher budget. Jill and Krista talked about they have really high needs individuals who rely on a much higher budget than serving different folks on the spectrum. Restrictive interpretation of the HCBS rule. So again, I think Melissa Harris did a great job talking to us about what the intent of the final rule is. It's not to close programs down that are offering services. It's to help define them and transition it into something that the HCBS could fit. States' restrictive licensing regulation. So at Marbridge, we don't have waivers right now. It's by choice because licensing requirements for that sort of endeavor is much more prescriptive. It's something we chose not to do at this point. Raising money to operate can be difficult. A lot of us operate as a not-for-profit with a deficit between the money that we bring in and the expense of the service we're providing. It's always hard. We don't want to depend on that. We want to have all kinds of sources. We want to diversify our revenue sources. So solutions are be transparent, invite people in, show them what you're doing. We had disability rights visit Marbridge, and kind of a funny story, they want to see everything, and so including closets. They're just looking under stones. Showed them everything, and we go to our rehab facility, our short-term rehab facility, and she goes, "What's in there?" I said, "It's a bathroom." And she just opens the door, and there's a nude man. We should have knocked. It's their home. But anyways, I welcome them in. I welcome to see everything. Let's be transparent. Separation of housing and services could be a big solution. In other words, the landlord separates differently than the people or program providing services. Yeah, in the independent apartment communities it applies to. Telling stories. We have such great stories, and we don't share them enough. I keep hearing that. We don't tell the stories enough. They're not heard. So those intentional communities are misunderstood. So I think we need to tell our stories more in many different avenues. Social media, webs, political engagement. Again, get people involved that can make the difference and changes. Come have them see your communities. Use families, leverage families. Using TFC as a platform of choice, as I said, join. Get your families to join. Get your employees to join. And join as an organization. Advocate for disability, developmental disability housing. It's needed. It's a big need. There's not near enough capacity to serve all the people that need those services out there.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Actually, a lot of times I'm a housing person, so whenever I talk to government agencies at the federal and state level, I always hear that they hear a lot from senior communities, but they don't hear a lot from DD communities. So they don't hear enough from us. And tax credit agencies, HUD agencies, housing and community development agencies, like you really have to speak up and say that we need just as much housing as others that come to you for help.
Look for ways to have better corporate governance. In other words, getting boards involved, and make it part of the broad mission of your organization. Looking for affordable private pay solutions. I think Jack was one that had an alternative, and Mark has some ideas, and I think there's some solutions inherent in that. State level advocacy. One thing I do in Texas is I try to get on everything I can get on. The Council for Developmental Disabilities, which, as you probably well know, they support state plan, which isn't very friendly to intentional communities, but I'm on the council. I tried to get on Disability Rights Board, didn't quite work out. Housing, what's the last one? That's it, okay. That's it. Thank you, guys. Yes?
The DD Council in Florida fought us as far as getting planned communities built in a big way. They even hired an outside agency to fight us because we had to get a law amended. When we resisted that because the council they had an executive director that was iron-fisted and was completely against it. We resisted the act itself, and then they turned around and the governor swept 17 of the 31 people off the council and replaced them with people that had a little bit broader vision. I was one of them. I referred to as being parachuted behind enemy lines. The council has actually done a 180-degree position change in Florida. They are, in fact, supporting, because they've come down and looked at it and they've toured our community and said, this makes some sense. I can't say they're out there encouraging and everything else, but they're not resisting it. So get your DD councils. If you have communities, get them out there. Get them to see the communities. That makes a big difference.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. I just want to take a second to thank some really amazing people that really worked hard all day long. They've had some long days. Can all of the residential directors, DT directors, anybody that's helped with this conference, please stand up. And we need to acknowledge all the work that went into this. Mary Pat, stand up. We've got family volunteers in the back. We've got sibling volunteers in the back. So all day long, we've had tons of people helping with this. So, but I want to say personally thank you to Jonathan Niedorf, who so he is the one that has held me up through this entire thing. So if I didn't have him, this would have not happened. So we really need to thank him.